Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the System 2 podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Hannah. Hannah has experience in market strategy, business development, strategic advisory. She's worked in a number of different roles. But before we get to that, Hannah, first of all, welcome on. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about you. What's your story?
Well, thanks for having me, Mate. It's really great to be here and speak today a bit about my story. Um, a bit about me. I come from a first generation immigrant family from Romania. My parents definitely had that struggle of starting from scratch and language barrier. I was born here. When I was a child, we decided to move back to Romania, so I had to break away from US culture for quite a long time. And I returned mid COVID. So it was a very interesting time to jump ship and move continents. And it was really more so a story of resilience where I felt like I was reliving my parents' experience, even though I was born with citizenship here and all of the pluses and not having to struggle from that viewpoint. But I studied art history. I used to work for a unisex company, a clothing company for a while where I was doing production throughout college. I interned at art galleries. And when I came to the States during COVID, I found myself struggling to find jobs, struggling to fit into society. Even something as simple as getting credit set up was a big hurdle. And I found myself pushing boxes at Target for my first job. I was working the 5 a.m. shift. I was putting merchandise on the shelves. It was a real, reality check for me, but also it's going back to that word resilience. It built that character I needed to really find what I want to do. And I was always working with people, trying to help people, problem solving, even such simple tasks as finding an object within the wonderful store of Target. Or like we say, Target, I really quickly just developed this sales tactic, and from there I got hired up. And afterwards, I was able to get an account management entry level position within MSC. MSC is a very large carrier in the shipping world. So slowly but surely, having that experience helped me level up and get to the next area of what I wanted to do. And so I think that's something I want to dive into today about what those skill sets look like for individuals that, want to go into sales, and just sharing a bit about my story and how going from target to account manager and higher looked like, and yeah, go from there.
Yeah, and I love that. And it is an interesting childhood where you're born here. What age did you move to Romania?
I was 8.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
how what was that like? Where where in Romania did you move into like a city, or what was that? Was there a bit of a culture shock coming from the US to there?
It was. I remember the first day of school. Oh my, I cried. I was like, "Mom, take me home."
Why? Why? Yeah. Say more about that. Well, yeah. Or
So my family is from Transylvania. My father's from Oradea, and my mom is from Brasov. We moved to Brasov. My mother took me to school. My first day at school, I thought it was when I stopped in front of the building, I thought it was, like a personal office or something. In the US, you have these mega buildings that fit thousands of children, and you have, top notch everything new, from gyms to cafeterias. You can forget about having a cafeteria in Romania. I remember asking my mom, "Where do I eat?" And she told me, "Well, you just sit in your bench and you eat a sandwich. Here's your sandwich." And I just remember having a meltdown the first day because I felt like I stepped into a time capsule that was set 60 years back. But I couldn't explain that in words at that age. So it was very interesting, for sure.
did you end up making friends? How did you get? Yeah. Did you end up creating a home there?
Did. I really did. It took a long time, but my Romanian wasn't that great. In the US, we had a live-in nanny that was Romanian. So we spoke with her, but it was very fragmented Romanian, right? Knowing to say basic things like, "I'm tired, I'm hungry," or whatnot. So when you're thrown in school where you need to speak the language and I could barely master it, it was really hard at first to make friends. I would say I was bullied quite a lot. And in Romanian culture, that bullying that we would call here in the US, not necessarily bullying, it's just part of that culture of making teasing one another, and I
So
had to
it's how we say
understand.
"I love you," you know, there's
Yeah,
some nice
what
bullying, yeah.
what they call Caterinca,
Yeah.
It's a way of actually developing friends, but I was so sensitive about it that instead of creating those bonds and laughing back at the kids, the first couple of years I was just shut down, and so I was Hannah Montana for a long time was my nickname, or Hannah the American, Hannah Americana. And I think only after I started mastering the language, understanding the culture, which took me a couple of years, I started to make true friends that to this day I speak with on a regular basis. And, the hard part was leaving that again, because it takes time. It takes time.
How yeah, so what made you want to come back, and especially during COVID?
Well, it's the classic story of your parents telling you at 18 they're cutting you off. And it was COVID. So I was freaking out. What job can I find? Can I do something I like? My siblings, they left to the States 2 years before me. So they're younger. They decided to finish their last year of high school there. So I was kind of getting a FOMO. I would see my sister, out and about doing whatever while we were in full lockdown in Romania. And I said to myself, my father was back there. I said to myself, why should I stay here? I can go there and it might be easier for me and I'll have my family, my immediate family close by. But there was also that side of me that was saying, do you really want to start again from scratch? What about your friends here, your life? But I decided to take that jump because I was scared, that maybe I'd stay in the same place for the rest of my life. Yeah.
And okay, so then you take that jump, you come to the US. Had you been back to visit since then, or was that the first time you're back?
I For the first 3 years, I hadn't gone at all. First of all, because I couldn't afford to. Second of all, I was probably ashamed to see my friends and not have a success story. You always see the success stories, but coming back home with, your tail between your legs, like, oh, I'm working at Target, I'm pushing boxes, I'm waiting tables. I just didn't want to face that. So I decided not to return. And the first time I went back, was 2 years ago, once I had a big girl job and I could afford to. And I remember getting my first bonus, and I was like, "Okay, we're going to Europe. Let's go for a month." So it was kind of a strange feeling because it felt like home, but it was no longer home. And I've been gone for quite a while that the culture, I felt changed. It's a strange feeling. It's like you
You
live.
felt changed? You feel the culture changed, or like the people back there changed, or what?
No, the culture was the same. I changed. I changed again, and it felt very strange, It's like you have 2 homes, but you don't belong anywhere. That's the curse of being an immigrant. That's the curse of moving around, of seeing a lot, of experiencing many things. And sometimes I wish I never left anywhere because maybe I would have been more content with less because, you don't have that analysis of comparison, you know?
Interesting, and yeah, I mean, you're an interesting example because yeah, like you were born here, and
Yeah,
yeah, you're this close to not having had any of this experience, and then
I
yeah, you
know.
went back and forth, and now you're back in the U.S. again, and yeah, I'm curious, yeah, like reflecting back even on that first school that didn't have a cafeteria, didn't have any of the amenities that American schools have. Are there I don't know, in retrospect, how do you feel about it? Have you warmed up to some of those things, or are you still like, if you could do it again, you'd rather be in a more well-funded school?
I would go back and do it 1,000 times over and over again. I think it was a great period. I felt like I was in a Wes Anderson film. It really gave me appreciation for tradition, for old things. It gave me an appreciation of community. Less is more. You don't need new, big, shiny things to be happy. I was fine being with 30 other children stuffed in a room, a classroom for 6 hours a day, and eating my sandwich at my bench and sharing it with my colleague because, it's I see the difference between kids here and kids that grow up that way in Europe. There's kind of no sense of boundary of personal space. You don't have it. You don't have the luxury of it. So it really creates strong bonds in how you have a social rapport with others. And I'm happy I experienced that because comparatively to the Romanian American society that is in my hometown where I was born, I keep in touch with them, but I can see the differences in how we view things and how we have social, understandings and interactions. So it's definitely something I would do all over again.
I love that. Okay, you come to the US, basically an immigrant, even though you
Yeah.
lived here until you're 8. What is the So what happened next? You're working in Target. How did you end up landing that first big job? How'd you do it?
I honestly think it was a Hail Mary. I promised my mother who works in shipping that I would never work in shipping. This was when I was 16. I told her I'm going to work in the arts industry. I'm going to work at Sotheby's in the auction house. And I tried to get into a lot of top notch schools in the UK at that time. And unfortunately, it's very niche domain. So I struggled getting in. I ended up going to a Romanian college studying art history. But, during COVID, when I was pushing boxes at Target and not living in a very large city. I was in the outskirts of Atlanta where my family was. I looked at my options. What can I do? And I saw this post on LinkedIn for an open position at MSC. It didn't say what the position is, just entry level. That's it. And they were looking to hire people for various different departments that they had within their Charleston office. I decided to go to Charleston, South Carolina to visit, see if I like it. It reminded me a lot of Europe, the downtown part of the city. I really liked the beach, so I said, you know what, I could see myself living here. So I applied for the job. It was the quickest interview process I've ever had. In 1 week, I was hired. I had one phone call, a background check, I was hired. It was a Hail Mary. I think the Target experience really helps because it shows perseverance. I was there for a long time, and I stayed in the same role. It was, hard working hours, the early morning and late night shifts. So I think that's something that opens the door. And they placed me in VIP BCO, beneficiary cargo owner department as an account manager. And that was the beginning of my now current sales career. And if I hadn't made that decision to try something out and not be like, no, I'm never doing this, I never would have entered into that world. And I think the shipping world is a fascinating one. It's always changing. There's so much to learn. And now with AI and tech, it's great to see the type of innovation and the type of growth and optimization that there can be in implementing them in carriers and freight forwarders and just how overall ocean freight is handled. So, yeah, that was how I got in.
It's interesting that there are so many companies that, for those listening who may not have heard of MSC, you're like, oh, it's some like small shipping company. And I just looked it up. It's doing like 100 billion in revenue. I mean, these are like massive companies that most people have
Nobody
never heard
knows it.
of. Yeah. How did you, okay, so you apply, it's a Hail Mary, you end up getting the job, and now you're in the job without like direct experience having done that kind of a role before. And how did you make it work? How did you end up succeeding in it?
It was very stressful. Day 1, when I had to present myself to the team, the first question I received was, "What are you doing here? You worked at an art gallery before in Romania. You did, production management. You studied art history. Why are you here?" So already that standoffish like reaction from my team was, uh-oh, how do I integrate here? Second of all, it's an entire industry with so many verbiages that I had no clue of, the acronyms that they'd just casually throw out there. I'd be like, what in the world is this? So I spent hours after work studying, learning as much as possible so I could succeed in the role.
I think it's interesting too, like from that vocabulary, the vocabulary is different. It's like learning a different language. It's kind of like when
Yeah.
you move back to Romania, I didn't really speak it, and you have to start learning a new language again just to fit in with your colleagues.
Exactly, because a lot of my colleagues studied logistics and supply chain during college. This is what they wanted to do. So I had to catch up, and it definitely took a lot of, outside of work, personal time used to study and understand the industry. And to this day, I still learn new things about it after 4 years.
What was and you're also interacting with clients. What was that like?
It was a game changer. I was interacting with large and global enterprises, with stakeholders, having to understand, the relationships between stakeholders, how you have to maintain those relationships within the company as well, how to enhance their work with the company, ensuring that you're delivering top-notch performance. It was something I was completely new to. And trying to navigate that was the hard part. So I chose to shadow people that I looked up to and that I saw were top performers. And I think that's the most important thing that you should do is compare yourself to top performers, mid performers, and the lowest performers in whatever organization you are, or team you are, and aim to be as high as possible in that food chain as you can be. And you can only do that by shadowing, asking the right questions, really absorbing the information, and learning new techniques.
Sometimes asking questions is can be intimidating, especially if you feel like you have something to prove to them and yeah, you're an art major. What do you know about this? Like, how did you get that courage to ask for help or to ask these kinds of questions?
I think it goes back to Romanian culture. There's a saying, and I'll say it in English, but the Romanian saying goes that if you're shy, you'll starve, which pretty much AKA means you need to ask or you're going to be stuck in the dark. And better to ask than not to. Worst thing is you make a fool out of yourself or you hear no. And I think that when you have nothing to lose and you're not afraid and you get past that intimidation and you believe in yourself, you have nothing to lose there. And if you come from a place of inner confidence when you ask a question, I find that people are more inclined to answer and help you.
Yeah, I think it's, I couldn't agree more, but it is, yeah, it's easier said than done. And
For sure.
sometimes asking the simplest questions requires the most courage because you think that you maybe you should know that, and yet most people don't ask those simple questions and they never really develop a fundamental, the baseline understanding of what something is. And yeah, it's even from my
Exactly.
experience, like sometimes the people make things overly complicated because they don't really understand it. And when you understand it, you can explain it a bunch of different ways, and it's not that complicated of a topic. It is, yeah, it can be a little bit intimidating to stop a
It
conversation and
is.
be like, yeah, let me go back to the basics. So explain to me how this thing works, and then let's go on from there.
I remember my boss at that time gave me a book that was like 300 pages long of the basics of shipping, the basics.
Yeah,
So that
it's
was a
great.
very helpful tool.
So awesome. Okay, so this is your first big job. You're learning, you're advancing there. How do you feel now? Like yeah, you're no longer at the shipping company, but how did you translate the learnings and experience you had there into what you ultimately want to do? Because yeah, it sounds like you're never quite passionate about the shipping industry, but it was where are you? Like have you developed this kind of passion now where you do
I
want
actually
to
have. I started out not being passionate at first. I was like, let me try something new. And slowly but surely, I have become passionate about it. I've written quite a few articles recently on my LinkedIn about the shipping industry and the challenges it faces with using AI as a internal checklist of compliance instead of truly understanding and asking the right questions of how we can bring efficiency to a very outdated process that a lot of shipping processes have internally. I am fascinated with the fact that I came to realize during COVID just how dependent we are on this, almost invisible industry to consumers, right? And how many players are in this entire process step by step. So, how I got to where I am, from account manager to market developer and a lead in growing businesses, it started still at MSC. really wanted to get into sales. There's a difference between account management and sales within MSC. Usually it takes around 10 years for people to get into sales. It was a very hard process. You had to do an internal move. I was only there for 2 years and I really pushed hard internally, finding the right people that could help me get there, people that believed in me. And it goes back to understanding who are the, makers and breakers and shakers and navigating your way inside an organization in sales to get what you need. So once I understood that, I was able to find the support system that saw the potential in me through what I delivered internally for the company. After 2 years, I managed to get promoted to sales manager. I was given a territory. I was given many different accounts that I handled for an additional 2 years. And that's where I really gained the big experience of understanding outsourcing leads, prospecting, looking at market research and trends, understanding where your competitors are at, negotiation skills, mitigation skills. These are soft skills that I think are underlooked and underappreciated because in today's, professional climate, people always talk about hard skills, especially in the technical development that we find ourselves in. What are your hard skills? So sales in a position like sales is very soft skill centric. And that helped me further develop into the role that I have today as a market development lead and navigating enterprises, understanding exactly where the pain points are from an advisory side, how we can perform and pitch in. And it's all about the value proposition that you understand and master. So I could go on and on about that.
Yeah, no, like I think that is, yeah, I would be I'm curious to hear about your process as to how you went from account manager to sales manager, and then some of the specifics, like how do you, wait, you get given this territory, you did it in like 2 years. Most people there take 10 years to get that sales role. Now you got it. What do you do on the first day? Like, are you doing cold calling? Were there certain like leads that you presented? Yeah, maybe talk through some examples of do you remember the first
Definitely.
sale that you made? What was that process like, and what did it feel like?
Yeah. This is nerve-wracking. I will say even getting into the sales position was quite a struggle because there are certain steps that the organization wanted people to take. And it goes back to resilience. I really fought for that role, and I had to sell myself and my value proposition for that role to the internal decision makers of the company. I remember my first day in sales, it was nerve-wracking. I was the youngest on the team. Everyone had 20 years over me. I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder, something I needed to prove. But I had a great manager, and I'm going to say his name today because I really am thankful. I think without his presence in my career, I wouldn't be where I am today because he believed in me, he helped me, and he trained me. His name's Angelo Latona. He is a VP of Strategic Partnerships currently at MSC. He's been with the company from its beginnings, helped it grow for US territory. It's at its size today thanks to him and a few other individuals that started out the sales team. And he was electrifying. The way he talks so easily and sell so convincingly. He was the number one person I wanted to so I made it my goal for the first month to shadow him as much as possible on all of my business meetings. It was nerve-wracking. I've never been in stakeholder meetings with 6 other people looking at me to give them answers. When it's over a Zoom call, it's easy. But when it's in person and when it's in front of a large audience with people that actually make the decisions, call the shots, it's a different ballpark. So I had to quickly understand presence and how you present yourself, how you handle a first impression from when you walk into the room. Ensure that you have every little possible issue resolved before you walk in so you have no surprises and have the answers. But I also learned that when you don't, because it does happen, you have to come from a place of transparency because sales at the end of the day is relationship building, it's trust, it's people connecting with you. And if there's ever a situation where I really didn't have an answer, I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't say something just to answer the question, but I would always say, I'm not sure right now. I'll look into that and I'll make sure to give you a call ASAP. And it always helped me. especially during my training period, because I think being in the first front line as a salesperson differs from account management because account management, you're solving problems. And then as a salesperson, you're looking for ways to increase business while solving problems, while being the face of the company, while facing internal struggles. You have to mitigate with the client, you have to mitigate internally. So you're wearing a lot of different hats.
You mentioned preparation. Well, and obviously you can't prepare for everything, but like what was that process like for you? Did you spend a ton of time before the meetings thinking about things, or is it just through the normal course of your job, you're making sure you're diligent, taking notes? Like how do you prepare for those eventualities?
I like to look at the people I'm dealing with, one. I want to understand their background, where they're coming from, how long they've been in their roles. I want to look at the account life cycle and their performance, with the company. I want to look at peer data if I have that, see what they're doing with others, try to understand why, look at our pricing, look at all these internal details so I ensure that no stone is left unturned so that when I do enter a meeting room for the first time, I already have an understanding of what their pain points might be, what their benefits are without them mentioning it to me. And I think that is an important part of the process, especially in sales. That research is key. And not just through internal, devices or internal structures that your organization has, but finding crafty ways beyond that to do research diligently to understand the profiles you're dealing with. And that can differ for industries from person to person. Now, I don't want to share them in too much detail because then I'm giving away my cards. But for me, the most important intent was understanding the personas.
Interesting. Without sharing too much about that, like what's the gist of it? It's like I don't know, reading people's LinkedIn posts. Like what kind of things do you do to try to understand them?
Yeah, their LinkedIn posts, their socials. I want to see what makes them enthusiastic, what they're passionate about. I like to understand them also from a personal perspective, what they enjoy doing. A lot of people have on LinkedIn their voluntary work, or a lot of people are into health and wellness. They'll share what they do outside of work as well. Besides voluntary work, I like to understand, what their background is, if they've always been in this industry or if they've been at a different company, especially in shipping. Do they come from a freight forwarder role into BCO, or is it vice versa? And it gives me the type of understanding of how flexible is this individual? How curious is this individual? Do we have things alike? What the conversation might look like when we have our first interaction? And I think it's important in many different roles to have that research done, not just sales. You're dealing with people and you need to understand people and you need to have that curiosity of learning about the person you're dealing with.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, that makes a ton of sense. But at the same time, I think the hard part in the process that you just described is actually doing it and doing it consistently. Where it's not so much okay, like yes, it makes sense to understand people and like do all these things, but I can also see a lot of salespeople just like, I don't have time, I don't want to do that, and I'm just gonna wing it because I've gotten good at it. Versus if you actually spend the time to look into somebody, to ask questions, to get to know them, then yeah, it's like everything else, the execution is harder than the idea behind it. And it sounds like yeah, like you've done a great job there.
Thank
So
you.
what's next? Tell me about your current role.
So I'm working for a creative agency. It was a very big shift. The creative agency world is very different from, shipping. And I wanted to try something new and try to develop my sales skill sets and see how I can apply them to a completely new industry. So I had this opportunity. And I think everything I learned up to that point really helped because I understood, going back to it, how to navigate relationships, how to navigate companies internally, how to understand, workflows and how sales pipelines work and how prospecting works, understanding the difference between prospects and leads. It helped me because I was put in a situation where I built a sales pipeline from scratch. And even though it's a different industry, it made me realize sales is sales across the board. And it goes back to the skills that I developed before. Maybe I don't have the lingo you learn, which I did again from scratch. And I had a wonderful team and a supportive team to help me do so. But at the end of the day, it goes back to what I was saying, that research, understanding the person you're working with, understanding their business, understanding what their competitors are doing. And this is a mix of advisory too, right? Because when you're doing research of that nature, it's advisory research, it's advisory work. You're understanding where the market is, where this prospective client is, where their peers are at, and having all of your homework done before to present to them that value proposition of this is what we can do for you. Same as shipping. You see, I was doing the same thing. It's a different product. And so again, it was nerve-wracking. It's been 6 months and I've had an amazing team, but I remember the first month I hopped on a plane to get to London. I took a risk. I'm like, "Okay, I'm in London now. Let's go." And at least I spoke the language, but, first day I was jet lagged. I didn't sleep at all. And here you go, headshots. Let's get you on the website. All right, let's get you onboarded, training. And I managed. It's the resilience. It's wanting to do more and learn more and be better and have that curiosity. And that's what I applied every day. And I will apply every day for as long as I'm working.
Curious what advice you'd have for people that are, let's say it's a Hannah from 6, 7 years ago when you're still in Romania, you're trying to do something, you're not quite sure what that something is. And even when you find it, it looks scary. You don't know if you're going to get that job. If you reflect on your career so far, what advice would you have for people that want to change your life and do more?
Such a great question and a powerful one. What I would say is never doubt yourself. You're the only one that can truly believe in yourself. I would say don't be afraid of the unknown. The known is where you're in your comfort zone. The unknown is where you truly thrive. And only once you're in the unknown and you truly are in the dark trying to figure out, navigate, see what direction you're heading is where you learn more about yourself. And I think professional advancement also does go hand in hand with personal development. You're only as strong as your next move. And your next move can be how you see yourself as a person. Your next move can be how you transform business practices. But you can't do that without having that confidence, having that inner strength. And you can't get that inner strength without the struggle. So don't be afraid of struggle. Don't be afraid of fear, of doubt. Just believe in yourself and believe that it'll all work out and have that resilience. Because if you show up every single day and you chip away at it little by little, you gain experience, you gain knowledge, you gain patience, you gain understanding about yourself and your environment. And once you feel like you've reached every little particle of that room, change the room, grow. That's the advice I would give to anyone that started out how I did 7 years ago.
You are much earlier on in your career relative to the other folks I speak to on this podcast, and I think it's a cool position to be in, right? This is I've been thinking about when you talk to people later or even towards the end of their careers, they reflect back on their life and all the things that they've and I started asking myself, like, it'd been really interesting to get that perspective when they were, yeah, like 5 years in. Like, how did these people that accomplished phenomenal things in their life, what were they like when they were in their whatever, like 20s, and they had so much ahead of them, even though they had already achieved like so much relative to where they started. And so I'm curious, as you think about your future and your life, what do you want to accomplish? If we come back on the podcast 10 years from now, what would you want to be then?
On a personal level, I want to continue to grow. I know people change, and I always want to embrace my change every step of the way. On a professional level, I see myself as someone that leads. I like to continue to grow within that leadership mentality and positioning. I would like to see myself help companies build from scratch and grow. That's really where I thrive in the unknown and figuring things out and seeing I'm a very competitive person, so seeing, the hard labor come to fruition is satisfactory for me, more than words can describe. So that's where I would see myself 10 years from now, in a position of strength, leadership, growth, and wherever that might lead me or wherever and however that might look, I don't know. I'm comfortable not knowing. I know that I thoroughly enjoy the world of shipping, and that's where I want to further develop and understand and continue that growth outlook that I'm talking about. And I know that when I'll look back at everything I've accomplished, I'll always feel a sense of pride because I try to show up for myself 110% each day, even on those days that it feels tough and, you're tired, you're exhausted, you just want a break. I try to go that extra mile. And I think thanks to that, I am where I am today, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Even though I feel like I'm stuck between two homes, two cultures, it's great. It's an amazing feeling. It's outside of the comfort zone.
Yeah, to be comfortable in that uncomfortable spot is where the growth happens. And yeah, I like that. I think it shows you that exactly to your point about embracing the unknown and being thoughtful without having the exact destination in mind, but knowing that you're seeking something outside your comfort zone is going to lead you somewhere. And as you start to ask these questions and being reflecting on what's it's not even so much about like the again, not so much about the destination, it's more about the process. How am I gonna get there? And to your point, the process has been about seeking to get better and to challenge yourself and do new things.
And having an open and positive mindset, I can tackle this. I can get there, whatever there looks like, you know. And you can only do that step by step. Sometimes people get ahead of themselves thinking 10 steps ahead. I always like to take it step by step. And I think that's helped me thus far pretty well.
Well, Hannah, I love it. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And yeah, I look forward
Thank
to
you.
connecting again and seeing what you're up to in the years
Let's
to come.
redo this in 10 years,
Let's
Mate.
do it. I would love that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.